So, hello everyone. I think everything is working. So, for today, and welcome to the stream. If someone is new in here, my name is Eric. So, this is like the free online classes for drawing and everything. And this is the number 5 of all the streams that we had done previously. And today I would like to talk about creating a little bit more complex objects, drawing a little bit more complex things, pretty much based on the architecture or everything, because I guess it's the easiest one to basically start with, because like photos of architecture are all over the world, and with the architecture you can pretty much study every single topic without any problems. But before we start, I finally managed to create a Discord server, so it is finally in here, it's finally alive. I even went as far as I created this small colorful icons and whatnot in here. Also, I was using a tutorial from a YouTube, so if it looks like a copy paste from other channels from the tutorials how to make a Discord server, most likely it is. Also, there are memes, so you can post yours. But yeah, that's pretty much all. The link to the Discord is in the description down below on the YouTube. So if you would like to just go in here and join and just post your stuff in here to have them like in one solid place, especially with all the things that we are doing in here for these classes, feel free to join. It will be fine, I guess, or fun. I'm not that good with a Discord, so if anything is not working, it's just by me. But yeah, this is everything that I managed to do. Finally, it took me like 4 hours to set everything up, but to not talk that much, let's just go to our main topic, which is drawing a little bit more complex objects using a really simple things. So first and foremost, the thing that you should do is you should really think on what level you are if you are going to approach drawing architecture or if you are learning. Of course, when we are learning, we want to draw epic stuff, we want to draw the most complex stuff, but not always this is the best idea to approach drawing or learning how to draw with this set of a mindset, because it simply might get really overwhelming really fast. So for example, if you're a beginner, like a complete total beginner, or someone who was never drawing at all and just barely like scratched the surface of the drawing basics and whatnot, drawing something like this could be a little bit more overwhelming, like too overwhelming, could be a little bit too complex, or most likely you will just simply, to say it delicately, fail while drawing something like this, or drawing an interior like this also might be a thing that is simply way too hard. So always there is, I guess, expression for it. Let me just translate it. Measure your strength against intentions. So I guess this is like a direct translation. But yeah, basically be aware what you are able to do. So if we would say this is like the skill line, and let's just mark it into 3, like here are the beginner. I guess there are 2G, but let be in here, let be intermediate, intermediate, and in here advanced, and somewhere in here like a master. If, for example, you are a beginner, like you feel you are somewhere in here, just try to draw something that is like in here or in here if you have like a bad day. Not necessarily just try to go with this level cap, with this cap level, skill level to somewhere in here. Most likely you will just have a bad time and you will discourage yourself. So in here, just go from the simple stuff to the really advanced stuff. And hello Robertson Alves, and hello Mikołaj. So pretty much if you will just follow the history of architecture, so if you will go like 5,000 years ago or something like this, and for example you will try to draw some houses from Catalhuyuk, I guess this is pronounced, which are basically like just boxes on top on the boxes. Most likely it will not be that hard, it will not be that that overwhelming. So let me only find where I am. Okay, in here. So most likely this will not be like extremely hard for you to draw. Like this is a lot of like different things combined together, but most likely the general idea of this place, I guess, is rather simple. So it's nothing too terrifying. And if you will like just go with all the like timeline for the architecture, most likely you will be pretty much good to go. But of course, sometimes you will just find different things that simply will be okay to draw. So for today, we will start with stuff like this, because this is like a really simple building. It's like just two solids or three solids combined together. Then we will go through like some really basic churches, and then I will show you maybe how to approach something a little bit more complex and why it is like pretty much just harder. So let me just turn on the stuff. Also, if you have any questions or whatsoever during the stream, feel free to ask them. I will gladly respond to everything. But if we have this type of a building in here, really the best thing that you should do at the beginning is to actually like stop for a minute, not draw for like quite some time, and just think, what do you actually see, what this thing actually is. So one of the biggest problems that a lot of beginners do, and sometimes even advanced type of guys or girls, they just try to draw straight away without thinking whatsoever what is actually a topic. So in here we can see like a really simple building. So to approach it with an ease, simply think what you are seeing. In here we have like a cylinder, so like the main building, the main part of the building is a cylinder. The thing that is next to it is kind of like a cylinder, but it's kind of like attached to the bigger cylinder, kind of like this. So basically it's like a little bit more complex shape, kind of like a block combined together to it. So basically this part will go in here. On top we have something that is basically a really simple roof that is kind of cut out from the top, and on top we also have like a really simple cylinder. So yeah. Okay, Zapra na Discorda nie działa. It should be working, but as I said, later I will resolve it. So if anyone is watching and would like to be on the Discord, then I would like place a new link in there. I set it to work for like ever, to never like end, but yeah, shits happen as always. But to come back with this one, a really important thing, especially if you are going to like study the photography and you want to draw something really similar, is to discover the place where is the horizon line. So the easiest way to do it is to basically search for a horizontal line in the thing that you are drawing. So for example, in here we see that this angle goes a little bit downward. This angle, even though it's like a bit like circled because it's on the ellipse, goes a little bit upward. So our best bet will be to just watch the texture of like the things, of the bricks or stones or whatever, and just try to more or less search for a line that is horizontal. So I guess the horizon line will be somewhere like in here, and it shouldn't be that big of a deal to actually draw. So if I were to start a drawing, most likely I will simply create a sketch. A really important part is when you are studying, and it's kind of hard to like understand it pretty much, don't try to draw everything really perfectly. This is not a place to be extremely like pretentious about being perfect. This is our safe space to simply draw some stuff, and don't really stress about it being like extremely properly drawn. So sometimes you will simply like scribble around and everything, but just try to get the general idea on the paper in a manner that makes it look at least okay. If you are also drawing everything on the paper, it's not that big of a deal. Once again, no one pretty much cares where do you draw. Like if you want to try drawing on digital medias, that's fine. If you want to try drawing on traditional medias, it's also fine. But the general idea is have fun with it and just simply do not stress about everything that you do in here. There is no need for like getting stress. This is like a really fun thing to do. And yeah, that's pretty much all. So of course, in this case, this is a pretty low effort drawing, I would say. I don't really like put full effort into it because I want it to be like a really simple study where I simply develop some really basic skills and I try to draw them with fun. So in here, as you can see, nothing really that complex truly happened. It's just like some cylinders, some circles, some whatnots, some lines, and later we of course can clean everything up, but this is like the basic idea for this like building. If I feel it's a little bit too narrow, then I should make it a little bit like wider with the ellipses. When everything is vertical, it's not that big of a deal. And when I want to add like these guys on the side, I will simply follow the perspective in here. I will try to add this block, this guy in here. I will try to mark like the wall before it like goes into a full circle. And at the moment, I'm simply trying to copy what I am actually seeing. So again, nothing really too complex, but it gives me the general idea on what I want to achieve. And if you are just, like, as I said, a full metal beginner, if you just want to start to draw, this is, in my opinion, the best approach for it because it's simply easy. I'm not overthinking everything. I'm not trying to like make the geometry like overly perfect, and I'm not trying to stress about it that much. But later I will show you how to actually stress about it if you just want to stress about it. I'm only trying to draw something pretty much for fun. And one of the things that you should really remember is even if you are drawing for fun, try to at least have in mind all the fundamentals and everything. So in here we have some like stairs. As you can see, they go like this. So basically the vanishing point is in here because I can kind of follow all the lines. And if in my drawing the vanishing point is in a different place, I don't really care that much. I only want this drawing to be like a really simple type of a study. So I won't stress about it that much. One of the things that will really hinder your process and progress is actually trying to be way too perfect at the beginning. I had this problem for a really long time when I tried to make everything really perfectly, and it kind of only caused me to like not finish my drawings because I did not feel like they were good enough to actually finish them, and it was really like slowing down my whole progress, the whole like learning process, because I was like not finishing the stuff. There are many videos on the YouTube where we'll basically tell you that finishing your things is extremely important, and this is like the best way to actually learn how to draw. You simply need to finish what you started, and with it there's a huge like possibility that you will actually learn something. So as you can see, it's not that, well, it's not that complex, especially since the building is relatively easy, I would say. Also, there is a mosquito on the wall, so it has begun. This is relatively easy, but again, it might look easier for me when I'm doing it because I have been doing it for quite a long time. And I simply know like quite a lot of different tricks that I can use for a drawing to make it look at least like decent, because I simply have done quite a lot of them. But as you can see in here, I am simply trying to like have fun. If the angle, if the proportions are slightly off, I do not really worry about it that much because I will have time in the future to actually improve on these factors. So I don't necessarily want to stress now about the about the proportions and everything. I want to get them close enough, but not to the point where I really like try to pinpoint them for them to be actually perfect. It will serve no purpose at all at this stage of learning, and it simply might get a little bit more discouraging. Also, if you will be drawing the same thing, like one of the things like this, like over and over again, and you will be trying to actually change some proportions while thinking about changing the proportions. You will actually also learn how to draw from the imagination, so it's like a win-win. By doing something a little bit more messier, there is a way, or there is a place for improvement, for developing different skills, because I could like make a variation on this topic. I could draw, like, I guess, a different version for it with a different composition for these elements, and then I will simply have a drawing that I could say is done from the imagination. And in my opinion, being able to draw something from the imagination is the best ability to have, because you will not be really dependent that much on the references, on the photographs and everything. And when you are not like depending on anything to create your art, it simply will be a little bit more pleasant. So, but this is just my opinion. You don't necessarily have to agree with it. Just see if there's a window on top of the entrance. And as I said, these are, let me see the different photo for it. Yeah, there's basically like a window like this. And as I said, this is pretty low effort drawing. If something is visible in a little bit different way in my drawing than on the reference, I also do not really like care that much. I kinda know that the angle in my drawing is a bit different. It is not extremely important. What is important is that you try to do something cool, you try to have fun with it, you simply try to draw something. And the best way to learn how to draw is to actually, as Jake Park I guess said in his video, is to actually go out and do it. So that's pretty much all. And with the things like this, always remember that the horizon line most likely is the most important line in every single drawing that you are doing. In here, as you can see, I lowered the horizon line in relation to what I see in here, because I kind of feel like the human figure is a bit closer to something like this in proportion to this building. It could be that the humans are like a bit bigger, but looking at the stairs and everything around it, it kind of tells me that the human figure is more or less like roughly this size. So keeping like a horizon line in mind actually is, in my opinion, the best way to also keep the proportions kind of okay. Not necessarily, as I said, it must be like the most perfect drawing that you have ever done, but it is okay. It should be like way better. It will be way better if you would actually kinda at least think about what you are trying to do. And yeah, that's pretty much all. And in here now, I'm only trying to like just add some details and everything. Now this is like the fun part where you simply sit and scribble and try to like draw all the textures, try to add all the different windows and everything that you can see in here. And if something is not really working for you, just simply change it. Also, this is one of the best tips I have ever gotten in terms of drawing. If you are drawing something and it does not look good for you, most likely it won't look okay or good for anyone else. So simply like rework it as many times as needed before you would say that it's finished. So simply just always try to be a little bit more like, just try to be open-minded and try to criticize your own work. As many different artists say, you will be your best like judge of the things that you can do and everything and yada yada. So yeah, in here I'm adding like this edge. And before we proceed, I would only like to show you a really simple approach for drawing, for example, the roof tiles and everything like this. So basically, if you have like a rounded rooftop, then the basic idea is you have some sort of an ellipse, which is extremely hard to draw on the graphic tablet, as I said in one of the previous videos, but it can be done more or less. And then you have like the middle of an ellipse. Most likely it will be a little bit more in the back, because in the perspective we see the front of the ellipse a little bit more than the back of the ellipse. Then we just add like a line in here. And now we pretty much have our rooftop. So now you can see if I go from the top in here, I basically create guidelines for the roof tiles. So this is the same thing in here. I keep in mind that the top part of this like cone will be somewhere like in here, and now every single like roof tile that I would draw in here would like simply go around everything that is happening in here. And if the rooftop is shaped like this, then the roof tiles will simply like follow this perspective and everything. So it's not really that complex, that big of a deal. Also, if you were like to go a little bit deeper into drawing architecture, you will also discover how many different types of roof tiles are. So this is also a really interesting topic, and you simply need to like experiment with all the roof tiles to see how to like draw them, how to make them look okay on a drawing. So this is pretty much all. On the top, as I can see, the shape is a bit different. It looks kinda like it's like this from the side. So I will simply change it because it's not that big of a deal, I would say. And if the line of the sketch in here is a little bit too small, I will simply add it, because why not? I can add everything that I want in here, and it can even go outside of the drawing. And for this type of a thing, for this type of an artwork, I could spend like 10 minutes for it and just call it done. Or I could sit for like an entire week and just try to render it perfectly. Whatever, to be honest, really works with you and whatever is fine with you. If you want to improve, just be patient. It will take quite a lot of time. And do not try to rush anything that you are doing. If you need like 10 hours to finish a drawing, simply spend 10 hours on doing a drawing. Nothing good will simply come out of you rushing whatever you are trying to learn. So in here, when I'm drawing a tree, as I said in the previous video, I simply try to like draw it with some like modules. So I'm trying to think about the angle of the cylinder, of the geometry that it is in here, that it has in here, and I'm simply try to add some shapes to it. Especially with the trees, I never try to copy exactly what I'm seeing. I'm only trying to make like, let's say, a rendition. I guess this is the right word. I'm trying to kind of see what type of a shape I like, where those shapes I want to appear on the drawing, and I just simply draw them. And that's pretty much all. For the smaller branches, you don't really need to worry about the perspective that much, because this object is like way too thin to actually like think about them as geometry. This is basically like a line. Even on the photo, it's basically a line. So this is pretty much all. And hello, Bento. Thanks a lot. So yeah, if you want to spend like 10 hours drawing every single like small branch in here, feel free to do it. Just it will be like a good practice of patience, which is also extremely important while doing everything that is related to art. But just remember to like keep it healthy. Don't stress over like the branches being not really that perfect in your drawing. It does not really matter, as I said, that much. So yeah. And as you can see, the drawing slowly but surely is coming like a bit nicer. If, for example, I want to create this edge for this tile walk, I can simply like duplicate the layer 3 times, and now you can see I got a really cool looking detail in my line art. So thanks a lot. I'm glad you enjoyed them. Also, as I said previously, if anyone is interested, I removed the layer, of course, but there is a Discord server. If any one of you would like to just go there and just go there. A friend of mine told me the link is not working, so I will like replace the link after the stream and see what was not working, to be honest. But yeah, that's pretty much all. So there will be a server. There is a server. But I thought, as I said, that I set it up for to never expire, but I guess it did. So yeah. And for the bricks and stones and everything that is happening around, this is basically the most tedious part of any drawing that has some like classical architecture, like the old architecture, because you will simply need to draw like shit ton of them. And at some point at the beginning it was like, oh, fun, you will be drawing like a lot of cool textures, but after drawing like 10 or 12 castles or stuff like this, you will pretty much hate drawing all the tiles and everything that you can see in here. So remember, vary your themes that you are trying to include in the drawings. And if I would say I'm quite happy for how the sketch is progressing, I can also try to add a little bit more to the background. So in here, the same story. There's no single way to draw, for example, green stuff in the background. So just experiment. Try to see what is really working, how you can interpret, how you can make an interpretation of the shapes of everything that is happening in the background. Just try different things, try different approaches. You will be drawing it differently than you will be like painting it, because yeah, maybe soon I will like make it work. So I have no idea why. But yeah, going back to this topic, as you can see, you can pretty much like scratch your way throughout everything in here. Or maybe just let me try to resolve the Discord server. Oh no, I cannot do this because the video is pending, so okay. So yeah. No, but I can post it in the chat. So let me simply, let's wait for a minute, because this stream today will be, I guess, a bit longer. Invite people. Expire never. 100 uses. Generate a new link. Copy. But someone managed to go in here, so it's fine. And let me simply go in a second to the live stream, and I will post the link in the chat. So if anyone is interested, here's the link. This one should be working. So yeah. But going back in here, as you can see, I can spend hours and hours and hours rendering this guy. But if you are a beginner, and if you feel like, as I said, you need 10 hours to finish a drawing, more power to you. Just spend like 10 hours on a drawing. If you want to just practice drawing basics, so you simply want to just get a grasp on it, simply understand like the basic things that are happening in the drawing, feel free to like make 10 hours, not 10-minute sketches or stuff like this. Don't really, just experiment, to be honest. It's really hard, in my opinion, to give like a one solid advice in terms of like drawing, how much you should be drawing or how long you should spend on each piece. I would say done, even ugly, like drawing, even if it's done in an ugly manner, let's say because you simply lack skill, is still better than drawing that is like started but not finished. So if there is a thing that I would prefer any student of mine do at all, to be honest, is to like bring me 10 different drawings that I can see they really pushed through and pushed hard to improve as much as they could, instead of like creating one drawing that is kind of okayish but it's not finished and stuff like this. So nice. So if it's working, then feel free to be in there. I managed to also put some bots and whatnot in there, but yeah. For the stuff like shadows, this is like the entire different story. You need to really experiment with it. For example, in here, I can like simply scratch them onto the drawing because I like this feeling. I like this like way of drawing where it kind of looks like a traditional drawing. I just simply enjoy drawing like this. So sometimes when I do this type of studies, I will simply try to draw them in this manner. And of course, after drawing like 100 of them, you will simply get a better grasp on what looks nice and what does not. So with time, you will simply improve your skills. And doing this type of stuff, in my opinion, is way better on traditional medias because it's simply easier. For me, for a really long period of time, I had serious problems with basically seeing the perspective on the Adobe Photoshop. So if you feel the same way, simply just switch your medium to traditional medias and maybe it will be a bit easier for you to approach. Maybe this will be the culprit. But as you can see, I could now sit for hours to come and simply just render this guy out. Also, don't be afraid to use like big brush strokes. For example, in here for this shadow, I want it to be quite dark. You just need to, as I said, experiment with stuff. Usually the bigger the brush strokes at the beginning, the better the drawing will look like later, because it will have a little bit more meat into it, if we can say it like this. Nice. So I'm glad the server is working, but don't be afraid for it. So for the drawing, like it will manage just fine. And one of the cooler things is if you mess up your drawing completely, if you just make a bad decision on the same layer and you will not enjoy how the drawing looks, nothing really that bad happened. Just move on to the next drawing. So for example, I might not like this layer in here. I might do something like this. I might not necessarily like how it does look. And yeah, but without me trying it, I will never know that I did not really enjoy working like this. So I simply need to like test some stuff to see what is working, what is not working. So this is pretty much, I would say, the whole logic behind everything that I do. Without like the experimentation, there will be no room for progress. And at the beginning, you just need to experiment as much as possible. So yeah, that's pretty much all. And in here, I might completely like mess this drawing up. I don't really care. I just want to see how it will turn out. As I said, nothing really too bad can really happen. And I can just try to draw different textures and everything. So for example, on the ground there are like this small rocks. So I can try to draw them in a place that, in my opinion, fits nicely to the drawing. And if I am not happy with a sketch, as I said, I will scrap it and start over. Nothing bad will ever happen from starting over. Most likely, the vast majority of the drawings that you will do at the beginning will simply suck because you have no experience. That's completely okay. You need to like fail several thousand times before sometimes you will manage to make at least one artwork that looks decent or something like this. And since, for example, for me, I have not been doing this type of stuff for a really long time, everything that I was drawing recently was not related to perspective. I feel kind of rusty, but this is like the natural part of simply not doing it for quite a long time. And yeah, we can say, and I will also try to, let's make this shadow really dark. And I will also try to add a shadow of a tree because I really dig how it looks on the reference. And these are also the things that you will like try to remember with time if you are drawing something that you feel looks cool. So for example, this type of a shadow I think looks really cool on the drawing. Also, like, remember, the shadow will basically project on the geometry, so it will like follow the shapes and everything. There is a reason why you liked something. So if you like something, remember it and maybe try to next time to reapply the same thing that you liked in the photo to your painting. Maybe it will like give you a cool idea for a drawing or a painting or whatever. There is a way that you will even, there is a possibility that you will even base the entire illustration on the thing that you found interesting on the reference. And yeah, and I could, as I said, paint this guy over and over again, but this was like the really loose example on how you can approach doing some studies. And for someone who likes to be a little bit more precise with it, not necessarily I would suggest drawing everything that is with the cylinders, because there's quite a lot of different, let's say, hard things happening with the perspective in here. So the cylinders are not necessarily the easiest things to draw, but you can do them pretty much okay-ish without like worrying, without like overthinking it. So for something that will be a little bit more technical, we will go with some sort of maybe like this, guys. I won't delete them, I will simply delete this part. I will keep them on the side. So let me go with something a little bit more like blocky, for something a little bit more boxy for the drawing. So the first thing, and also all the photos that I took in here are from the web. They are not like perfect ones. If anyone knows the original authors, let me know, but I do not. So this is like the random photographs from the internet. So again, I will also save the file. 305. Okay. Before we start drawing anything, it's always a good idea to think what we actually need to draw. In here, as you can see, finding the horizon line is extremely easy because basically in here we have like a really solid horizontal line. Maybe it's slightly tilted, like the whole camera is slightly tilted. So most likely the whole drawing, the whole photograph, for it to be vertical, will look a little bit more like this. But this is like a really small detail. And if you struggle as a beginner to find a perspective, simply use some tools. If you have a Photoshop, then feel free to use everything that comes with the Photoshop to simply help yourself with the drawing. So in here, I will simply mark where I think the vanishing line is. And as you can see, I found without any problems one vanishing line. So I already have the basic idea on what type of a perspective I will be working in and I will be working with. This is a really important part. Now if I were to change it for like a bluish, well, this one still needs to be red. Now let me move this guy, or even better, let me kinda duplicate this because it will get pretty huge. I will make it a bit smaller because I can see the second vanishing point will really be far away. So I will take the line tool again. I will take like a bluish hue or something like this, and I will try to make a vanishing line through something that is really obvious, I would say. So in here, I can easily say, almost made it perfectly. If something is not right, simply adjust it, that the vanishing point is somewhere in here. Let me check it with the different part of the geometry. This is completely fine, boom. This is fine, boom. And it works for everything. So as you can see, this is basically our perspective grid. One thing that is also happening in here is the 3-point perspective, something that is a little bit more hard to do. Basically what it means the vertical lines in this photograph pretty much do not exist. Every single line that is in here is slightly tilted, so Photoshop and it's crushing stuff. So in here, as you can see, the vertical lines simply will be a little bit tilted, and that's pretty much all. So it might make the drawing a little bit harder to do, but it do not necessarily mean it will be like an impossibly hard to make. So I will just keep this guy as a reference on top. In here I have like this bigger picture, so simply I am able to see everything that is happening in here. And instead of drawing like exactly the same photo, because you could just copy the photo with the things like this, I would show you how you can simply study the geometry of this building while actually trying to do it from the imagination, because this is relatively simple building, I would say. It's nothing really that complex, so you can draw it from a different angle, and in my opinion this is even a better exercise than simply copying the photograph. If you feel you want to copy a photograph, everything is perfectly fine, but if you can try to make an exercise a little bit harder for you, then it's also fine. You will never know if you can do something without you trying. So in here, I am drawing like the main body of a church from the top. So basically I start with a really simple like surface type of a thingy, and I will be drawing this guy in 2-point perspective. So basically 2-point perspective means the vertical lines will always be vertical. There will be no this tilting type of a thing happen. because I don't want it to happen. And in here I am using shift. I will be using shift if I draw a line and I'm not sure about the perspective and I really want to get it right. For example, I will simply like draw a line and try to align it with the transformation tool. So I keep in mind that everything that I do, that I draw in here, is going to the perspective. So there is my like one vanishing point, there is like my second vanishing point, and I can do these things all day. So for example, I can like take this guy, flip it horizontally, and simply I will try to match the perspective. It's a little bit more like eyeballing if you don't feel like matching everything just by the eyes. You can of course like create a perspective grid and everything and whatnot, but you don't always need to create a perspective grid. Sometimes it will, in my opinion, even be better if you were to try to draw something without like a really solid perspective grid, just as a sake, for the sake of practice. So in here, as you can see, I think like the basic geometry of this box, because what I got now basically is a box, is quite okay. If something is a little bit slightly off, I do not really care that much, as I said. If the proportions are a bit off, I do not really care. What I want to do is to learn how to draw the solid, because if I will understand what is actually happening on the geometry level, then most likely I will be able to draw the same thing from every single angle that I can possibly imagine. So a huge advantage to the Photoshop that it has over the traditional medias is the fact that you can pretty much redo everything, but it also can be a disadvantage, because if you can do redo everything, then most likely you won't keep your mistakes, your errors on the paper. You will have a harder time to learn from them. So remember, try to keep like a healthy balance. If you feel like drawing is easy for you on the Photoshop, try to draw the same thing traditionally. So yeah, but as you can see, for this guy, what I want to do now is to create like the rooftop, and I can see the rooftop is basically a triangle that is extruded, and at some point this triangle got cut rooftop, which will be a bit weird, or I think there is a tower and the back of the rooftop basically is normal. So we will do like this scenario because I think it is a little bit more believable thing to happen, because usually you don't build like a flat rooftops. But yeah, that's pretty much all. And as you can see now, what I want to do is to basically draw a rooftop. So what I do in here is I bring this point, let's say A, to a certain height. I go with the same point, let's say, and this one will be B, and I want to connect them in a way that they will follow the perspective that I have. So the B will be in here. Now if I want to add a rooftop, basically it's a no-brainer. I simply connect the dots. This is really easy. What I really recommend you to do, if you can, I usually can, is to also add a cross section in the middle, because the cross section in the middle will really nicely show you how the geometry progresses with the perspective and everything. A really cool trick that you can also include in the Photoshop is you can rotate your screen horizontally, vertically, so you can see if the geometry is off or something like this. I feel something is a little bit not right with this line, but as I said, I don't really care as much as I am learning the geometry, like approach for the drawing everything that I have in here. As long as, okay, the next drawing I will like be a little bit more mindful of drawing the bottom part. So now let me draw the tower in here, because this is like the second most important thing in here. And we would say that the drawing will be, that the tower will start like in here. Nothing really too crazy, but basically what I have done now is I cut a fragment of the frontal plane of this thingy. So now what I can do in here is I can draw a square in a perspective that will simply follow the whole perspective that I have in here. It might be a bit harder to do. You might like need some rotation and everything. Might need to rotate some things. And sometimes you might need to like rework your initial like line because simply it will be placed in a wrong thing. Personally, I think drawing this type of stuff traditionally, as I said, is way easier. Just because I guess it is. But the Photoshop gives you like the advantage, as I said, of being able to rework everything over and over again, and also to use a lot of different colors. So as you can see now, we have drawn a plane inside our building. I don't think it's like long enough, so let me make it a bit longer. And this is also a cool part with the geometry. For example, now I can follow this red line because basically this is a guideline. I kind of feel now this plane, the whole plane with the addition in the back, is a little bit more squarish, and I want this tower to basically be a square. And now in here, to simply like attach this geometry to the building, I will create some sort of a like cross section in here, the blue cross section, that will follow the geometry of the whole building. If something is really off, most of the points won't really overlap with each other. So for example, if this line that I'm drawing now will be off, like the angle will be weird, then it won't meet in here in the proper way. Because what I did now is I introduced the blue cross section, and that's pretty much it. So yeah, this is everything that I have done. And it's nothing too complex, too crazy, but it makes the job done. But as you can see, even drawing a really simple shape can really get really quickly very overwhelming with lines. So here basically kicks in the practice. The more you will do, the clearer the drawing will be for you. If you were to draw with the pencils, then it becomes really even more complex because you simply do not have color coded everything. So take advantage of the colors. And in here also a really cool thing happened because the blue line is overlapping with the red line. It does not mean they're like in the same point, they're in the same like position in the space. It kind of means like that this hand is kind of overlapping with the microphone, and that's pretty much all. In drawing, this type of stuff happen all the time. So yeah, so let me finish adding a tower, and boom, we will have some sort of a tower. So basically from every single like 1, 0.2, 0.3, 0.4, I'm drawing like vertical lines for the tower, to appear. And now, as you can see, adding this line is the easiest for me because this is a really similar angle. It will be going slightly lower because it's higher and it's closer to the perspective, but yeah, this line will go a little bit more like this. And also you will immediately see a difference with the visibility of the planes. The plane in here with the 1, 2, 3, and 4 points is simply a little bit more visible because it's lower from the perspective. Now I kind of see this line is a little bit going too much too up, too high. It should go a little bit more down, and it will also bring this line a little bit more down. And in here we have like this plane. If something does not really feel right, for example this line does not really feel right, then I will simply try to like rework it as many times as needed. And a really cool thing is, if you struggle with this type of stuff happening to you all the time, simply create like a line. So let's grab a green ugly color, duplicate this line. Oh, not like this, without the tilt. So basically if you select a line, press Ctrl Alt T, move it slightly to the top, press Enter and Ctrl Alt Shift T. It will allow you to create a duplicate of the same transformation. If I will find myself struggling with the perspective, I will simply create like a perspective grid. So I can match it to what I actually have in the moment on the screen. And by changing the layer to a smart object, as you can see, now after I apply the transformation, now I can like rework the thing. I can change the angles, I can change the details and everything. And now I have a really cool reference for myself for the drawing. So now I easily can see that the back of the surface is not really working well. So I simply need to slightly rework it, and it will fix pretty much every single thing with this surface, with this tower. And it was only done because I introduced a really simple perspective grid to my drawing, and that's pretty much all. So usually if you have problems with the perspective, use some tools to help yourself. They are in here to like simply help you, so don't be afraid of using them. And sometimes you will also like meet the opinion that the artist should be able to draw everything without any tools and whatsoever. To some degree, yeah, but if you are struggling with a drawing to the point where it becomes really hard for you to even enjoy the drawing, then do not really care about this type of a like attitude. As you can see, I created a really simple grid. So if I were to approach it really simplistically, if this is even a word, you can do it like this to make it kind of like a no-brainer. You can draw like a square in the perspective. You can select some like width on every angle and simply follow the lines, the diagonal lines. So basically what it will give you is like this pretty much a plus type of a shape. And the plus type of a shape will pretty much allow you to draw a tower like this, because you simply like extrude the height through the middle and you simply connect every single like point to each other. And I would say this is a no-brainer. If you want, you can construct everything on the ellipse, because if you were to draw an ellipse, then it will allow you to like divide everything like perfectly. But to be honest, in vast majority of the drawings, you can eyeball it. It won't be like that big of a deal. And now if I were only like work on the readability of this guy, then I will be pretty much all set for the rest of the drawing. So let me just select this guy. Also a really cool trick to select everything. If you press Ctrl and select everything, make sure auto select is not selected on the top, is not checked, then you can like select every single like layer that the selection touches. So it might really be a game changer. For me it was a game changer because it allowed me to work way quicker and way faster with every single thing that I used to make. So let me choose like this, not this color, something like a little bit more orangish, so it will be at least visible. And I simply would divide every single surface to halves, because I want to know where is the middle of each surface, because it will also allow me to make the plus shape inside a bit easier. As you can also see, the drawing got way more complex just by adding it, and I simply want to like mark everything in here. And of course I marked the wrong thing, because now I kinda want to eyeball. I could, as I said, construct everything, but I don't really want to. I just want to have a little bit more fun with it. And now, even without drawing this plus type of a shape, I can simply, as you can see, mark this hectagon, I guess. If it has 8 sides, this hectagon. So basically now I have a point in here, 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 in here. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I guess this is an octagon. And I know where the middle is, because if I just choose, like make the cross section, the middle of the geometry is right in here. So now I simply draw a line to the top. And most likely what is happening in there is like a double type of a roof, because it most likely goes like this. But this is also a really easy thing to add. So let's say at the beginning I will only like mark the things that I actually see, so I won't really worry about the things that are in the background that are not visible. So for example, for this points in here, I won't care about them because I cannot see them. And usually what I would do is I would create some sort of an offset. So for example, all the lines can go now a little bit lower. So I'm simply kind of like changing the geometry a bit, but it will kind of allow me to draw the offset around the geometry. It is like a really a shortcut type of an approach, because for example in here you can see it will like interfere with the solid, so in here it's supposedly not a good way to go. But if I were to only slightly move it up, this will be the smallest change ever, it won't really affect the whole drawing. Then I can like add this height, because this is like the added height I just did, and I simply can add the additional like depth to every single like point that I have in here. So soon I will show you separately what I am actually doing right now, because as you can imagine, and most likely as you can see, it's pretty much hard to see what is going on in here right now. But let me soon tell you that this is not as hard as it looks like. And even if you are drawing something like this and you feel like that, okay, maybe it's not looking that good, remember there's always this like margin of error, when you can pretty much kind of hide your mistakes by simply like drawing a bit of a thicker line or something like this. You don't necessarily need to be like extremely perfect in here with everything. So if I feel that, okay, this is still not really covering the whole like square in a nice manner, I would simply like move it a little bit more to the top, and I would say everything is pretty much fine and dandy. Later I will like rework it. But what I did right now, if you want to create an offset for your drawing for this guy, simply I'm adding a height in here, adding the same height in here. So if I were connect these lines, they will give me like an additional surface. So basically I'm drawing like a extruded triangle at the bottom part of it, and now on the bottom I can extrude the shape. So simply I'm adding a geometry to it. It still follows the perspective, and I can make the rooftop like being like doubly tilted, doubly broken. I have no idea how to say it, but I hope you get the point. But now, as you can see, pick, and it really allows me to create a really like quick offset to the geometry. To make it even simpler, basically, if you draw any type of a shape, you will select a point, go through the middle, and this is how it basically works. If you were to follow the same geometry around, it will create a uniform offset across the entire thing. So this is a really nice way to add offsets, to add all the shapes that are happening in there. I do not want to remove these guys. But as you can see, this is pretty much our church, and to be honest, the like hard part is done. So I will simply group it, duplicate it. I will connect everything, and now I can change the colors. I can, for example, bring the saturation down. I could do something like this. So I bring the opacity down, and I need to turn this off. And now what I can do is I can actually draw on top of the thing that I have in here. One of the things to keep in mind when you are drawing from like photographs, that some things will be protruding on the side. So keep in mind this shape is not really like a uniform line, because a lot of beginners will simply like make a wall, roof, and it looks like this. In the real world, most likely it will look a little bit more, let's say like this. There will be stuff happening to the outline, so just keep it in mind. It's really important for the drawing to make it look a bit better. So, but coming back to this guy, now drawing the rest of the drawing will be pretty much a no-brainer, because I can simply follow the geometry, I can follow the perspective that I have already established. Now I can add a little bit more geometry to the rooftop, because I want it to overlap the front of the building, and it makes quite a lot of sense for the drawing to be like this. And of course you can like add this type of details at this point, you can add them later, does not really matter. I will make the whole thing slightly longer, because I want the roof to like cover the entire building. So again, not necessarily I am following the lines that I initially created. I will simply just try to add a little bit more to them. And now I am adding the rooftop. Usually a thing that works extremely well with everything that you are drawing is using like double lines or triple lines, like basically doing those phases, those chamfers, edges, those additional details in the drawing, because in real life it's like much more happening than a single like line. So usually if you can, just try to add like a little bit more lines to the drawing. It will make the whole thing look simply a bit cooler. If the tower is slightly like too wide, I will just simply draw on the inside part of the line, because it's still like it's within the margin of error, so I can make it look still nice. And because I still have like the entire perspective grid underneath, it's really hard for me, to be honest, to make any type of a like hardcore perspective mistake, because I can basically see everything that is happening in here. So for this type of a detail, just do something like this. That's all. You're all set. If you want to add a window, you know where the middle is. You can more or less like eyeball the width of the window, and simply you can add it. This is basically like a rectangle with like a half of like the top part being rounded. That will also have like a thickness to it. Remember, the windows are not like the stickers. They do have a depth to them. In this case, they also, like, let me remove this, guys. It has this part, and it has like the series of lines that simply follow the perspective. So this is a detail, but those type of a things will make the drawing look nice. These are what make the drawing look nice. So yeah, if I can make it any more clear. Now I kind of think, because I covered in here everything, that yeah, basically the entire rooftop that I have drawn in here is not good. It should be a completely different shape. So let me redo it quickly. I got too carried away with drawing a rooftop that I am really familiar with from the classes that I'm doing pretty much all the time. So let me simply rework it. We will be making the top part of the surface. So sometimes, as I said, mistakes happen, and that's all. Nothing to be ashamed of. You can always rework something. So I will be adding the top part to it. And what I wanted to do now is I wanted to actually, the first thing that I have done was, okay, the points should be inside. So let me simply eyeball it, and let me, whoops, add the points to the geometry. This will go in here. So as I said, I will need to go with the plus shape as I initially wanted to. And now I will simply, like, I can do it in a different way. So also a different manner, a different approach to add a rooftop. As you can see, I am only adding the lines that I can see. So this way the drawing is a bit cleaner. And now I'm marking the offset on the actual drawing at the moment on what I have in here. Boom, we'll go like this. And now from these points, I go to the top. So this basically creates like this double broken, I have no idea, as I said, how to set it, type of a rooftop. And now this is the rooftop. So there would be a circle on top of it. So this is the way how you can approach drawing a rooftop. So later with this drawing, I will simply need to like add a bit more stuff to it. And with the things that are happening in here, I'm not entirely sure. Maybe they are flat. It will be a really weird type of a thing to have in a rooftop, but maybe this is how it looks like. It's hard to tell. Or maybe something like this is happening. So in here there is the surface, and in here we have like this type of like the finishing. It will be a really weird type of a thing to have on a rooftop, this shape will be like overly complex for no like real reason, but maybe this is how it looks. And also this is like one of the reasons, as I said, why you should actually try to study a bit more, like think on what you are going to draw, because now I am not entirely sure what is happening in here. So this stuff happens all the time. And now if I want to create the offset for the thing, I will slightly enlarge it. So I said enlarge it. So the whole rooftop will slightly go off, like go out of the outline of a building. And now I will also include some phasing to it, so it will look a little bit more as a developed shape. And let me quickly clean the lines that I don't want in here to appear. And this is how you can quickly change a rooftop. The cool part of the geometry, as I said, and like drawing those type of things over and over again, is if you have any type of a problem, like I had just now, it's not really that big of a deal to change something without much problems to begin with. So it might be not the best rooftop, probably later I should like rework it, but if we were to go forward with it, in here something like this will happen. In here it will go like this. Then we have this small offset on the bottom of a church, which basically probably is just for the isolation type of a thingies. And boom, we have a main like rooftop added. So now if I were to draw some roof tiles, they will follow the cross sections that I have in here. Later I will add them so you will see what I mean by it. There's also a window on the side. So if you want to draw it perfectly in the same window, then simply map the height to the side with the perspective. Boom, boom. Nothing really that complex, as you can see. Because basically what I do, I wrap the same shape around, and now I try to kind of eyeball the same shape to the side of a building. If it will be slightly off, I don't really care. If the amount of like those flaps in the windows won't be exactly the same, I won't really care. To be honest, I won't even care how much of them they are in the reference. I could, but I don't. It does not really matter that much to me. But if you just want to make a drawing be a little bit more precise, feel free to count stuff like this. All should be fine. And adding windows to the front and doors is pretty much exactly the same. If you want to do it in a little bit quicker manner, you can always, for example, use symmetry tool. So look, this is a really cool thing, especially for Photoshop users to have to actually be aware even of, because like as far as I know, still quite a lot of folks are not aware of those type of tools. So in the top there is like this butterfly icon, and in here you can like simply draw a window in the symmetry. Now what I want to make is pretty much create like one layer of windows of these stuffs, and now I will simply select them. Well, deselect the bottom part, work a bit more on the selection, and as previously, Ctrl-Alt-T will duplicate the shape, and it's almost perfect. So now I will simply move it a bit more to the top. We'll also enlarge it a bit. And now I have a window. Nothing too complex, I guess. What I would like to do now is I would like to draw doors. So the doors are roughly at this place. We were to discuss height of it, and roughly they are like, I would say like this. And now I can select and draw everything that is happening on the doors. Boom. Sometimes drawing like ellipses, this top part is really annoying because it will like end up weirdly. But as I said, it does not really matter that much for us. it's still way more detailed than you will usually need to have. But now I will add this sun type of a detail to the door frame. And the best part of like the symmetrical drawing is it's relatively quick. So for example, if you need to design some sort of a door, using a symmetry tool is pretty much the best way to approach it, because it will simply allow you to really quickly create a really great results. So you can quickly see how something will look when it's flat. And what I can do now is I can mark this point, and I will simply take this window, I will move it in here. So now I have those windows on one layer. They are also the same windows on the sides, but let me just take this layer, convert it to the smart object, and now what I will do, I will simply be lazy, and I will place them in here in the perspective. So now I want to like use the big square for them to like fit everything perfectly, and then I will simply with Alt like change the proportion. I will what is also cool about this, it will also keep the perspective when you are distorting it, if you are like moving it with shift, because now I'm moving it with shift. And now I simply try to match the pretty much the texture to the drawing, and the only thing that I'm keeping in mind is to the center of the doors should be in the center of the building. This will like ensure me that everything is placed properly in the perspective. The only problem with this technique is that now it's really flat type of a thing. Basically this looks like a sticker on a building. So remember, if you are drawing something like this, to always move the thing inside. So simply I use the polygonal lasso tool in here. Boom. And I simply can move everything without any problems whatsoever. And now I have something that looks a little bit more believable, that looks a little bit more like it's placed properly in the perspective. So for this type of a guy, I will treat them together because I want them to like have the uniform transformation happening with the details. And also this is a cool part of the Photoshop again, that you can do something like this. The not cool part is that you can actually do something like this. So sometimes some folks will use this instead of learning how to draw it. So I still encourage you that you should actually learn how to draw this type of a thing by hand, because this is just a trick. And still, nothing really beats the ability to draw. I think that the entire thing is slightly tilted, so yeah. And I feel if something is like just not right, I will simply select, for example, this window. I feel like it's a little bit too close, and I simply will move it. If the lines are too thin, I will duplicate the layers like 2 or 3 times, and the windows are added. To the side, the same story. I can select the window. There are like 3 or 4 windows on the side. Ctrl Alt T, can duplicate them 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. We will see. And the same story happens in here. Convert to smart object. And now I will simply try to match the perspective. I could project those lines in here to like ensure that the proportions will be exactly the same. But I can also kind of eyeball it, so I can go like in here. And this stuff will be, well, we'll go a little bit more like this. And this will go a little bit more, yeah, a little bit more like this. This will be roughly the same point. And now what I will do is I will simply try to match the perspective. Now I feel there will be a place for another window, so I can go into the smart object, because this is a relatively easy thing to do. I will simply connect the thing. I just pressed on the small icon on the layer. I added one window. Now when I save this thing, now it will add the window in here. So I could also like place them in the perspective first, then edit the whole thing, and I will be also all set. So nothing really too complex. And again, everything that I do in here is just using the tricks in the Photoshop. In my opinion, if you really want to get good at it, you basically should try to draw everything that I do in here with the Photoshop, with all these tricks in here, by hand, because only then you will make sure that you actually understand what is going on. And sometimes, for the sake of drawing, it's just a pleasant challenge to just try yourself with something that is a bit harder. So every technique has their like advantages and disadvantages, but as you can see, I was not really using anything that was really that complex. These are like a really basic shapes that I simply combined together that allowed me to create something a little bit more complex. I guess later, with like those classes happening, we will try to tackle like way more complex type of an environment, a little bit more of something that you can see, for example, the students at Fengzhu Design are doing, because this is basically the same thing, just they are doing it on completely another level. They are doing it in a really way more complex type of a thing. But if you were to design a church or something like this, this is how you can later render it. So the last thing is to add stairs. And remember, stairs are made for humans, so try to keep the scale relatively realistic. So don't make like a one huge step, just try to draw something that looks, well, that looks somehow okay. And if some line like this will be a bit off, nothing really happened, that will be too crazy. It is simply the way how it will go. And now we have some stairs added. And the cool part of having also this like perspective grid on the ground is now that I can also like draw some like stuff around, add some grass to it. Basically, I can just add things for the drawing to happen in here. So adding some small windows. The next part, of course, will be like reworking the line width and everything. So for example, everything that is like below something, I strongly believe should be, that is overlapping with something, in my opinion, it should be heavier visually, because it will simply indicate that there is a shadow happening. And if we have some shadows and everything and whatnot, then the drawing basically looks better. You can go with something that will be a little bit more like an outline for the entire artwork. I not necessarily say that the outline is a bad thing, but just keep in mind that the outline should most likely be thinner than the shadow line. So also remember to turn off the symmetry tool, because I was drawing the church on the left, as you can see. And also for this whole thing, there is all the textures that you could apply to the drawing, and I will also show you a really quick method how you can do it like in the Photoshop without having to draw everything purely manually. But as I said many times, I still believe you should, if you have the capability to draw everything manually. In the final, like, forgot to add a depth to the top part of the window, but it's not that big of a deal. Boom. And we have been something like this and like this. And as you can see, this is not necessarily a really hard drawing to do. And what is cool, I was pretty much not using the reference. I had a reference with a completely different angle, but if you understand what you are drawing, then you can draw everything that you wish from any angle that you want to. So this is, I would say, a relatively okayish looking base for the drawing to happen. So if you were to design something, as I said, then this is like a good way to go. For the details, like for example, all the wood that is happening in here, all the small thingies that are happening on the thing, I would add at the dead end of a drawing, because you don't necessarily want to go too deep with all the details at the beginning of a drawing. Then it will be most likely distracting for you, and if something happens that you have messed up the perspective completely, then you will basically lose quite a lot of time. But a cool trick with the things like roof tiles is I can create like a really simple texture for them. So I will only like create a single row. Move this guy's in here. I will like move them. I guess that much will be enough. Roof tiles are actually quite huge. Then I will do something like this, and what I want to make is to make sure that the bottom line is a bit heavier than the top line. Whoops. And now I can manually add roof tiles, so we have quite a lot of roof tiles. I will simply convert to smart object. As previously, I will try to match. I mean, I won't try to match, I will simply match the perspective to it. They are a bit too big, but soon I will show you why also using smart object is fine. If they are too big, I can, for example, extend everything like this. I can add, let's say, that many roof tiles. Boom. I will save the file now, and now it is in here. Now it automatically added the thing, and I only need to slightly change the proportions for it. Now I can also use the mask. So you press this small icon in here to make a mask, and now I will simply mask the tiles where I don't want them to be. So on the tower, and I don't necessarily want them to be on the entire building, most likely only in the area where they touch with some sort of a geometry. So on the front, maybe slightly in the back, but I don't want the entire thing to be covered in the tiles, because it will usually not be that pleasing, I would say. And as you can see, it took me like a minute to add some tiles to it. With the lines on the side of the building, this is basically the same story. I will create a line, duplicate it slightly. This is way too thick. As you could see, it was really hard to even look at it. So it will be a really thin line. I will increase the distance between them. So basically by using Ctrl-Alt-Shift-T, as you can see, I can create a really, let's say, complex texture relatively quickly. I will change this to the smart object, and I will simply match the perspective in here, and I will match it to, whoops, I will match it to this part. Somehow I accidentally made a line. As you can see now, it looks kind of like shit, because basically having that many lines the same place is not necessarily the best idea, but I can match it in here. I can match the perspective, and if I am missing, like, as you can see, the entire like round of the textures, I can edit the smart object. It will cause both of the smart object to change accordingly, because this is like one smart object but duplicated. So I will cover them, and I will simply erase the thicker line. And now, as you can see, it decided to add everything from the bottom instead of from the top. So I will simply like change the perspective in here. Boom. Boom. I should of course duplicate those guys in here, so I will only change like the angle of the back thing to keep the thickness of the lines. I don't think it's okay because it's not in the perspective. Yep, like this, like this. This will do the trick. I duplicate it. Looking at those lines is really not pleasant thing to do, or way too many lines. And also this is why I think this texture should be like way thicker. But now what I can do is I can connect all these layers. I simply place a mask on top of them, and I am using a mask because I want to be able to like change the texture. So for example, now if I paint with black, I can bring back what I have erased. So now I can erase everything that I don't like. I will erase the texture from the windows and from the doors. I don't even need to be like really precise with it, because if I were to add a shading to it later, then it won't matter that much. I take some sort of a like brush that will nicely remove the texture, so I don't want the texture to be that visible. You simply need to experiment what type of a brush will work well in your opinion. Maybe something like this to only like show the texture slightly. And there we have it. This is basically our church drawn in the perspective. And now I can like add the entire like environment to it, because I have a grid, a perspective grid, and it looks kind of okay. I see the places that I can improve. So for example, this window is way too big in my opinion. If it's way too big, I will simply like select it, and I will I will simply make it a bit smaller or a bit thinner, because we can, and now it looks a bit better. So I would say this is the way how you should approach drawing pretty much anything, and especially how you can approach drawing everything that is a little bit more complex. Basically start with simple solids, combine them into a little bit more complex solids, and as you can see in here, this is basically like a box with a box on top of it, with like a triangular box, with a box with a little bit more complicated rooftop that does not look really good, because I'm not sure what is happening in here, but you get the idea on how to draw it, with some like basic stairs and whatnot happening around. So you can duplicate the layer. So as you can see, if I will duplicate it 3 times, it has this like cool kinda old type of a drawing look. If I am not necessarily all convinced on like this surface to be properly placed in the perspective, after finishing everything, I can slightly like rework it, so I can slightly bring down the bottom part of it, and maybe it will look a little bit nicer. But this is like I would say, a no-brainer approach to drawing things. So to recap everything a bit quicker, basically start from simple to complex. This I would say is simple, relatively simple. If this rooftop is too much for you, just go with something like this. This rooftop is extremely easy, and just try to like use photos and you will be fine. At some point you will be able to draw stuff like this, but if you were to like analyze it a little bit more thoroughly, this is a box, the same roof, we have drawn this. This is like a cylinder, we have drawn this. This is a cylinder, we have drawn this. This is a rooftop that is a bit easier from what we have done, we can draw this. This one is also kind of easy but looks kind of cool. And cylinder, cone, cylinder, box, 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 like pyramid or something like this. And this is pretty much all for all the things. So I guess in the next stream, because this will be the end of this one, I will try to focus a bit more on the cross sections. As I said last week I would do today, but I did those type of things. So maybe we will draw some sort of a car or something like this, basically to populate your scene. So if you draw like a church or a building, you can draw a car next to it, or you can add a human figure next to it. So yeah, and initially also I would like to keep this thing as 10 lessons in total. And after it, as I said, I would make some Gumroads with every topic a little bit more, explained in a little bit more complex manner. Also remember that there is a Discord server that I have made, and the link is in the chat. I will replace the link from the chat with the one in the description down below, so if anyone is watching like after the fact, there is a Discord server below if you somehow missed it on the beginning. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you have learned something or you have any questions, feel free to ask them on the YouTube or in the Discord server. And that will be all for today, and thanks for watching. I hope you will have a good day and a good night or whatever, and see ya to the next time.